Deleted Peppa Pig episode The Neverending Rain. This episode was never shown on TV. It all began on a typical rainy day. Peppa, George, and Mummy Pig were watching the rain pour down from the window. The usual calming sound of the rain was there, but something felt off. The rain just kept coming, louder and stronger, as if it had no intention of stopping. As the day passed, Peppa noticed that the rain wasn't just falling. It seemed to be moving on its own, swirling in unnatural directions. Peppa tried to go outside, but no matter where she went, the rain followed. George ran to Mummy Pig, but the rain had already entered the house. It was dripping from the ceiling, seeping through the walls. The house was getting wetter by the second. Mummy Pig wasn't worried, though. She simply looked up and said, "Don't worry, Peppa, it's just the rain. It's been here before." That night, Peppa heard faint whispers coming from the bathroom. She could barely make them out, but it felt as if the sound was coming from behind the mirror. She crept inside and froze. Her reflection was grinning, a wide, stretched smile that didn't belong. Suddenly, it moved fast, slamming its hooves against the glass. Cracks started to form. The screen flickered, and for a moment, everything went black. When the picture returned, it was morning. Mummy Pig walked into the bathroom, and Peppa stood by the sink, brushing her teeth like nothing had happened. But just before the scene faded, the mirror showed two Peppas, one brushing her teeth, and the other behind the cracks, still grinning. The episode ended with no credits, just a silent black screech. Deleted Peppa Pig episode, The Spider. This Peppa Pig episode was never aired on television. It was removed. And now it's clear why. It all started like a normal day. George was playing on the carpet, Peppa was organizing her toys, and Daddy Pig was reading the newspaper. Mummy Pig was cooking breakfast. Everything felt calm. Until George screamed. He said something had bitten him on his leg, 2 tiny puncture marks. No one paid much attention. A few hours later, George became sluggish. His face turned pale. He wasn't talking or eating. He just sat, breathing heavily. By evening, he stopped moving. That night, Peppa woke up to a strange noise. There was a rustling sound coming from the living room. George's bed was empty. Peppa went to look for him, and she found him. In the corner of the living room hung a web, huge like a tent, and inside it, George. He was stuck to the wall with webbing. His eyes were open, black, but he didn't move. His stomach was swollen. Something was moving inside. An hour later, Daddy Pig disappeared. Then Mummy Pig. Peppa was alone. The web was growing. It wrapped around furniture, walls, and the ceiling. The house was turning into a cocoon. She heard breathing. Behind her, she turned. The spider, huge, black, hairy, crawling along the walls. It moved toward George. One leg touched his stomach. The swelling cracked open. From inside crawled a small spider, spider-like, with a monstrous version of George's face. It twitched. Peppa ran to her room. The last thing she saw, her parents already hanging from the ceiling. Then she saw their faces, distorted and terrifying. Threads were pulling out of their mouths. This is a lost episode that was never aired on TV. It all began on a normal day. Peppa lost one of her baby teeth. "Hooray!" she shouted, "Dad. Now the tooth fairy will bring me a gift." Mummy Pig smiled. "Put the tooth under your pillow, dear. There'll be a surprise in the morning." That night, Peppa woke up. The room was dark, but something felt wrong. She heard a crunching sound from under her pillow. When she lifted it, the tooth was gone, but there was no gift either. Only a strange white lump, like it was made of bones. The next day, George complained about a toothache. Then Mummy Pig, then Daddy Pig. They all said, "Maybe we ate something bad." That night, Peppa woke up again, but not from the crunch. This time, from breathing. Someone was sitting by her bed, a figure, gray, far too tall, with long arms and a grin that stretched ear to ear. "Do you brush your teeth well, Peppa?" it whispered. "You give them to me, one by one, every night." Peppa screamed, but no one came. George was asleep with his mouth open. His front teeth were missing. Mummy was standing in the hallway, smiling. On her cheek, a white patch like bone powder. Peppa ran to the mirror. On her face, new teeth were growing, but not hers. A third row, sharp, wrong. She ran back to the bedroom. Everyone's teeth were falling out, more and more every second, and someone stood in the corner. That same figure, but its face. Oh God. Deleted episode of Peppa Pig, Secret Disappearance. It was an ordinary sunny day. Peppa was playing in the garden with Rebecca. Suddenly, she noticed that her friend Rebecca had disappeared. She looked around. No one was there. The garden was silent. Peppa began searching for Rebecca all over the garden. Suddenly, she spotted a silhouette of her friend behind a large tree. The figure stood still, as if frozen. Rebecca's eyes were black as a bottomless abyss, and her face seemed made of shadow, as if it was dissolving into the air. When Peppa took a step closer, the silhouette suddenly vanished. At that moment, everything around started to distort. The trees appeared blurry. Sounds became muffled and echoed in her ears. Peppa felt a chill down her spine and a slight shiver, as if something sinister was approaching. Peppa tried to scream, but her voice got stuck in her throat. The figure began slowly approaching her, disappearing and reappearing again, as if playing a game of cat and mouse. The world around her started glitching more intensely. Colors blurred. Space seemed endless and unreal. At this moment, the figure disappeared just as suddenly as it had appeared. Suddenly, Rebecca ran out from behind the tree. She was running after Peppa with a desperate look in her eyes. Terrified, Peppa ran toward Rebecca's house. Inside, she saw a family of rabbits.
Something's wrong with Rebecca. She looks very strange.
Their faces were terrifying, twisted features, eyes glowing red. Rebecca's parents turned slowly toward her with mad eyes and asked,
"Who is Rebecca?"
It was an ordinary day. Peppa saw a new game on Daddy Pig's computer called Coin Collection. She started collecting coins, and everything seemed fun and harmless. At first, Peppa enjoyed the game, but day by day, she became more absorbed and lost track of time. Soon, dark circles appeared under her eyes, and the joy disappeared. One sunny day, Mommy Pig was tidying up toys in the nursery. She hadn't seen Peppa for a while and decided to check on her. Pig entered the room to turn off the computer, but what she saw shocked her. Peppa was sitting in her chair with wires connected to her head.
"Mom, I'm almost at the final level!"
Peppa exclaimed, her eyes clouded. Mommy Pig rushed to disconnect the wires, but as soon as she reached for them, Peppa raised her hand. Another wire appeared out of nowhere and plunged into Mommy Pig's neck. Soon she found herself next to Peppa, absorbed in the screen. Meanwhile, George and Daddy Pig were watching a show about Mr. Potato in the living room. George asked where Peppa was. Daddy Pig shrugged. George decided to check what was happening in the room. He entered and saw Peppa and Mama connected to the computer. He stood there, overwhelmed with fear, but before he could do anything, a wire shot into his neck as well. He too fell under the influence of the game. Daddy Pig also grew bored, sitting alone in the room, so he went to call the family for an evening movie. He entered the room and saw that everyone was now playing. Deciding to stop this madness, he turned off the computer. However, the screen still flickered on. Suddenly, a wire shot forward and connected to Daddy Pig's neck. He froze. His eyes clouded over, and he too succumbed to the game. Suddenly, the lights went out. Now the entire family sat on the sofa in the living room with empty eyes. Wires protruded from their necks. The TV flickered ominously, showing a terrible grimace.